Hi there, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's January 2nd. Today we celebrate the feast day of a gardener abbot and an important day in the life of the father of taxonomy. We learn about the man who planted the first pineapple in Hawaii on this day in 1813 and the botanist who shared a train with a president during his honeymoon to the Santa Catalina Mountains. Today's Unearthed Words feature garden-inspired New Year's poetry from an artist and writer whose life has been obscured by time. And we grow that garden library with a book that is trendy and handy and all about the greenery of January, houseplants. I'll talk about a great garden item to help your potting bench stay a little more organized. And then we'll wrap things up with the story of a couple who discovered the winter home of our most beloved butterfly. But first, let's catch up on a few recent events. The online magazine House recently shared the Backyard of the Week, which featured a woodland garden with Scandinavian roots that was designed by Amy Martin Landscape Design. It offered clean, organic lines that set the tone for a sloped yard. And if you have a sloped yard, you're going to want to check out that post. So if you're in the Facebook group for the show, the listener community, just search for Woodland and this post will pop up. Anyway, in the post, the hardscapes act as mini retaining walls. The grade was dealt with without a single retaining wall. So you've got to check that out. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it's a novel way to address slope on a property. Anyway, the idea was to deal with the grade without making a highly structured terraced retaining wall. So they graded the yard, filling it and sloping it to make navigating it easier and more comfortable. And it's actually very, very beautiful. If you have a property that backs up to a woodland and you want some creative ideas for how to seamlessly transition from one into the next, from your yard into the woodland, and you don't want to break it up so much, this is a fantastic post. And again, the garden and the yard, the entire landscape was created by Amy Martin Landscape Design. She did a fantastic job. And then Architectural Digest shared the landscape designer Louis Benech's work. He infused a Normandy retreat with memories of Long Island. It's a great post. And Louis said, "For me, the garden is like walking into a dream, and my dreams are memories from other countries. I'm more attached to the garden than the house." And you've got to check out this garden because it's absolutely beautiful. And if you're a world traveler and you'd like to incorporate elements of your travel into the landscape, Louis is a great designer to follow. Now, if you'd like to check out these curated articles for yourself, you're in luck because I share all of it with the listener community in the free Facebook group for the show, the Daily Gardener Community. So there's no need to take notes or search for links. The next time you're on Facebook, just search for Daily Gardener Community and then request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. Today is the anniversary of the death of Saint Adelard of Corbie, a patron saint of gardeners who died on this day in 827. Adelard was related to Charlemagne. They were first cousins. In addition to serving as the abbot of the abbey, Adelard was also the gardener. Today, on Saint Adelard's feast day, Adelard is remembered in church iconography, working in his garden, while his abbot's crown is shown resting on the ground beside him. And today, Carl Linnaeus went a courting on this day in 1735. He briefly visited an 18-year-old woman named Sarah Lisa in full lap costume. He returned the next day, and he spent the entire day with her and her family. By the end of the month, his friends were betting bottles of wine that there would be a baptism in the next 4 years. Sarah Lisa was from a wealthy family. Her father was a doctor, and he agreed to allow Linnaeus to have her hand once he'd established himself. So Linnaeus went off and established himself and returned 3 years later. Linnaeus and Sarah Lisa were married on June 26, 1739. 14 years later, on May 1st, 1753, Linnaeus published his masterpiece, Species Plantarum, and changed plant taxonomy forever. Linnaeus is known as the father of taxonomy. His naming system is called binomial nomenclature. Binomial means two names, which in the naming game includes the plant's genus, which is capitalized or could be abbreviated by its first letter, and the species or specific epithet, which is all lowercase and can be abbreviated SP. If you have trouble remembering taxonomy, I like to think of it as the given name and surname of a person, but in reverse order. The names that Linnaeus assigned live on unchanged and are distinguished by a capital L with a period after their name. And it was Linnaeus himself who said, "God created, Linnaeus ordered." The national flower of Sweden is the Linnea borealis, or the twin flower. After naming over 8,000 plants, the twin flower was the lucky plant to which Linnaeus gave his name. And it was Linnaeus's favorite plant. In the case of the Linnea borealis, Linnea is the genus and borealis is the species, and it references where the twin flower is found. Borealis means northern. And as for the story for how Linnaeus named it after himself, he was actually persuaded to do so by a Dutch botanist, his great friend, John Frederick Gronovius. Twin flower belongs to the honeysuckle family. It's a tiny, sweet little plant offering a faint scent of vanilla. And today, the first pineapple was planted in the Kingdom of Hawaii by the Spaniard and botanist Don Francisco de Paula Marin in 1813. The Hawaiian word for pineapple translates to foreign fruit. By the time Marin was in his early 20s, he had already made his way to Honolulu from Spain. It would be his home for the rest of his life. Marin became a friend and advisor to King Kamehameha I, who consolidated all the Hawaiian islands during his rule. Marin served in the Kamehameha dynasty in various capacities all through his life, but he's best remembered for his work in horticulture. 2 years after planting the first pineapple, Marin planted the first Hawaiian vineyard using vines of the mission grape. And in 1817, with the approval of King Kamehameha, Marin planted the first coffee seeds in Hawaii. Marin is remembered as Hawaii's original farmer. And today is the birthday of the botanist John Gill Lemon, who was born on this day in 1831. Lemon and his wife, Sarah Plummer Lemon, were both botanists. And although Sarah partnered equally with her husband on their botanical work, their papers were always published with the credentials J.G. Lemon and wife. The Lemons had found each other late in life in California, and they had both suffered individually during the Civil War. John was taken prisoner at Andersonville. He barely survived, and his health was impacted for the rest of his life. Sarah had worked herself ragged during the Civil War. She tended wounded soldiers in New York while teaching full-time. In 1881, the Lemons took a honeymoon trip to Arizona. They called it their botanical wedding trip. The Lemons rode a train to Tucson along with another passenger, President Rutherford B. Hayes. When they arrived in Tucson, the Lemons immediately set off for the Santa Catalina Mountains. In Eliot's History of Arizona, there are some recollections of the Lemons' time in the mountains that illustrate their fortitude and bravery. It's recorded that during their time on the Santa Catalina Mountains, they often sat on a stone porch of their cave and they dug the thorns and spines out of their hands and feet. Once they saw a lion so large, he carried a buck away without dragging the feet or the antlers. Now, the Lemons' first attempts to scale the Santa Catalina Mountains were unsuccessful, and they were told to meet a rancher named Emerson Oliver Stratton. And it was thanks to Stratton that they were finally able to ascend the Catalinas from the back. When they arrived at the summit, Stratton was so impressed with Sarah's drive and demeanor that he named the mountain in her honor, and it's called Mount Lemon. Sarah was the first woman to climb the Catalinas. 25 years later, in 1905, the Lemons returned to the mountains to celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary. And when they climbed the Catalinas in celebration, Stratton was again at their side, helping them retrace the steps of their botanical wedding trip to the top of Mount Lemon. And today in 1899, the first issue of the New England Botanical Club's journal, Rhodora, was published. The first editor was Dr. Benjamin Robinson of Harvard University. Robinson served as an assistant to Cyrano Watson and succeeded him as the curator of the Gray Herbarium at Harvard. Today on the Rhodora website, it says, Rhodora is a journal of botany devoted primarily to the flora of North America. It has been in publication continuously since 1899. This peer-reviewed quarterly comprises 400 to 500 pages per year, and members of the New England Botanical Club receive the journal with their annual membership. And in case you're interested, an individual membership in the United States or an international membership is $50. Great deal. In Unearthed Words, the artist and writer Minnie Amanier wrote some of the most beautiful verses about the garden and about ringing in the new year. Although little has been written about Minnie's life, she was part of an artistic family. Her father, William, founded the Aumonier Studios in 1876. It was an architectural sculpture firm in London, and her uncle James was a painter. Minnie wrote, "Pure as the joy a garden gives, the memory of a true friend lives, and like a garden through the changing year is ever lovely, ever fresh and dear." And the old year passes into the new, and gladness fills all the earth for the joyous awakening of bud and blossom is at hand. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Leaf Supply by Lauren Camilleri and Sophia Kaplan. The subtitle to this book is A Guide to Keeping Happy Houseplants, and it came out in April of 2018. I ran across this book in a gift store over Christmas break, and I absolutely love it. The cover is gorgeous. And by the way, Leaf Supply is the name of their book, as well as their Sydney, Australia-based houseplant delivery company. Leaf Supply is a beautiful, practical book. It offers advice for choosing and caring for over 100 easy-to-find houseplants. And Lauren and Sophia recommend houseplants over giving fresh flowers as a gift. Of course, everyone loves getting fresh flowers, but houseplants are a gift that has staying power. More than a plant guide, Lauren and Sophia give inspiring plant styling advice in this book. It helps you choose pots and make the most of your indoor greenery. And plus, there's advice on pet-friendly as well as harmful plants for your home. Anyway, it's absolutely gorgeous. Leaf Supply by Lauren Camilleri and Sophia Kaplan. And there's another great gift for gardeners that I stumbled on over Christmas break. It's Colonial Tin Works 3-bin desk organizer. Now, even though it's a desk organizer, I got this little tin organizer that I'm going to use and repurpose it in my potting shed. And I love it. It's perfect for gathering up all of the small odds and ends that manage to find their way onto my workbench. And this little organizer will save gardeners time from hunting for all those little bits and bobs that we need to hang on to. I love the compact size and the patina of the tin because, of course, it's this galvanized metal, but then it has these lovely rusted areas that are absolutely perfect. And then it's got the cute hardware plus the label holders, and I love label holders. So the dimensions of this little organizer are 10.5 inches wide by 5 inches deep and just 6 inches high. And you get the 2 label holders and decorative handles. They're all built in. You don't have to assemble anything. And it's just cute as can be. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. On this day in 1975, the naturalist Kenneth C. Brugger and his then-wife Kathy Trail discovered the first winter refuge of the monarch butterflies in Mexico. Kenneth had been born in Kenosha, Wisconsin in 1918. After serving in World War II, he began working for Jockey International, the company known for making underwear. Kenneth was mechanically inclined, and he ultimately became Jockey's chief engineer. Kenneth was credited with many of Jockey's innovations. He even invented the machine that minimized shrinkage in the fabric of the underwear. It was called a compactor. During the 1960s, Kenneth moved to Mexico. There, he met his future wife, Kathy. In 1972, Kenneth read an advertisement that had been placed in a Mexico City newspaper by the Canadian zoologist husband and wife team of Fred and Nora Urquhart. The Urquharts had followed the monarchs as far as Texas, and Fred and Nora believed that the butterflies ended up settling somewhere in Mexico, but they needed help, which was the reason they placed an advertisement in search of citizens to help their research. Luckily, Kenneth and Kathy answered the advertisement. Kenneth was an avid amateur naturalist, and Kathy was a native Mexican. Kathy knew the country, and she understood the culture and the people, and she was fluent in Spanish. Together, Kenneth and Kathy ultimately became paid assistants of the Urquharts. And it was on this fateful day in 1975 that Kenneth and Kathy completed the work began by Fred and Nora 38 years earlier, when they discovered the winter home of the monarch butterfly in the mountains of Mexico. 20 months later, in August of 1976, Kenneth and Kathy's discovery made the cover of National Geographic magazine. The image on the cover showed a picture of Kathy covered in monarch butterflies. She was just 26 years old. In the years since the discovery, Kenneth and Kathy separated and then divorced. Kathy changed her name to Catalina and moved to Austin, Texas. She tells people, "I'm not a scientist. I'm a gardener that likes insects." Kenneth died at the age of 80 in 1998. And Kenneth and Kathy's quest was memorialized in an IMAX movie called Flight of the Butterflies. And there's one touching fact worth mentioning about Kenneth's personal story. His Wikipedia entry says that he couldn't fully appreciate the beauty of witnessing the monarchs at their winter home. Kenneth was colorblind. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org, and be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up, and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.